Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Welcome back to my channel. Today with my August wrap up, and boy, what was happening in August. I have no idea. There were some bombs that I read throughout the month, and I'm so excited to talk with you about that. Since there's a lot to talk about, let's just jump right into the stats first, and I want to start off with a ginormous thank you to all of you guys, to all of you who subscribed, who are watching my videos, who are commenting on my videos, who are coming back to listen to my crazy stories again. Also, big thank you to Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads for the shout out the other day, because all of this combined now led to the first month that I actually have a positive subscriber count since I started my booktube channel, which is exciting. Real quick, for those of you who don't know, this channel was actually a craft channel way before. That's where the subscriber number comes from. And due to, work and other reasons, I didn't do as much on the craft side anymore, but I wanted to continue doing videos. So I changed my channel to book reviews after it was closed out for a year, nearly 2 years. And that was not a good idea. If you ever think about do that, don't. Just start a new channel. In hindsight, that's what I should have done. And I was close to 5,000 subscribers, and in the last years since I've done book reviews, they have been going down. No surprise, right? People who are interested in crafting are not necessarily interested in reading. So I lost a bunch of subscribers, and while I also gained some due to the book stuff, I never gained more than I lost. So I always had a negative subscriber count for the since I started. Which is fine. That's, I'm living with this decision. But August was the first month where I actually had a positive subscriber count. And that's something I'm super excited about. All thanks to all of you out there. So I really appreciate you. I just wanted to let you know that. I know usually I don't talk about subscriber count and whatnot, but I am over the moon about this. All right, now to the August book stats. I finished a total of 9 books. In the month of August, I DNF'd one. Ratings were all over the place. I had a 1 2-star rating. I had 2 3-star ratings. I had 4 4-star ratings and 1 5-star rating. Books. Let's start with romance because that's going to be an easy and quick one. I read My Roommate is a Vampire on audiobook for the month of August. Do not recommend. That was my 2-star read. It was cringy. The narration was not great either. The writing was not great either. It was weird. Let's just roll with that. It was not a good book. Don't read it. Do not recommend. Let's jump into fantasy though, because there were some fantastic books. And I want to start with Darktown by Palma Pickering, which is a first book in a lit RPG series by her. I actually won an ebook for this over from Kate at the Literary Apothecary a while ago. And then Indie Book Tours added this to one of their tours, so I just signed up for that. So it kind of forces me to read the ebook that I won a while ago, because I have been meaning to read a Palma Pickering book since I've seen her Heliotrope series. You can watch my little reel if you want in my shorts on YouTube that I did for the book tour or over on Instagram. There are red terries in the book, so how could I have not made a quick video with my own red terry in it? It's cheesy, but she's cute, so that makes it all better. This book is about a young girl, Tamaridi is her name, who works at a bar with her mother, and she kind of wants to go to that game where her brothers and her father went to a while ago, years ago actually, and never came back. So underneath the city they live in, there's a big dragons game that adventurers can go to and, become famous and rich, that kind of stuff. And one day she finds the secret entrance and decides, you know what? There's no better time than now to go on an adventure, and that's what she does. It is more on the cozy, wholesome side, I would say. It's a bit slower in pace. It's definitely more focused on the game progression than on whatever character development and those kind of things. So if that's something you're interested in, this was a really fun read. The next book was Godfrey's Crusade. That's a book that I read. It was totally not planned, but I joined last minute the Keymark Readathon because, I was still on a high from July, so I kind of wanted to continue. And the Keymark Readathon is always relatively low-key. You only have to read 5, or in this case 6 books. You get points if you do reviews, which I always support. And this time they had 3 teams, and each team picked a secret book to read. And the team I was on picked Godfrey's Crusade, The author was nice enough to give us a code for the audiobook, so I listened to that on audiobook while I was putting some Lego together. To be specific, that's the Lego I put together. It's a rather typical fantasy book, very typical Western fantasy, a little bit Northern inspiration, medieval style, with, knights and crusades, as the name says. And we're following Godfrey, who's rather young. He is signing up for his first crusade, and the first book is essentially about him kind of positioning himself with all the war veterans and whatnot. There's a little bit of magic in there. That's actually something that I found rather interesting, especially on the villain side of things. Nothing unique, nothing that stands out, but I thought it was a very solid read, very well written, and I'm definitely curious about book 2. I think book 2 is out already in ebook, but not in audio yet, if I'm not entirely mistaken. And then, my friends, I read a book I was not ready for. That was The Gunslinger by Stephen King, by Dark Tower. I don't know why I wanted to say by Dark Tower. I don't know why I'm not capable of saying this right. Whoa. I mean, this was such a great reading experience. I started this and immediately I was so sucked in because of the weird writing style, because of the weird storytelling style. This was on a whole different level. And I know this is not a popular opinion because usually people are like, ugh, I just need to read it and then get to the actual series. I would have loved a whole series written like that. And I'm kind of hoping we get some of this in the other books as well, because that was really, really good. This is about the gunslinger, and there's this very famous first line: "The men in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed." And that essentially is the story of the book. So you're getting to know the gunslinger as he is following the black men through the desert and what happens throughout his journey through the desert. What I loved about this is nothing is being told to you, not even the name of the gunslinger. You learn that relatively late in the book, actually. You don't know why he's following the black man. You don't know what's going on in that desert. You don't really know where he's at or what the world is about. He throws you into the deep end. And, I trust Stephen King, so I don't worry too much about not knowing these things. And it pays out, I think. The ending is cuss. There's no other word for that. I think it's a super bold ending, and I don't think a whole lot of authors would have done that. So I'm really, really interested to see how parts of what happened at the end continue. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble because I'm so excited about this book. And even though I only gave it a 4 stars, I might give it a 5 stars, once I'm done with the series and see where some of these story strands are going towards. I might up the rating, but this is my favorite of the month, hands down. And the next one too. The next one is For the Killing of Kings by Howard Andrew Jones. Again, more medieval Western fantasy inspired. We are in a world a couple of years after a big war. The big hero died, and we are thrown into a situation where one of the friends of that big war hero is found drowned on the school grounds. I don't know really if it's school grounds, but it feels a little bit like school grounds. Anyway, and then, you follow a bunch of characters who think there's something going on, something is not right with his death. They believe there's a conspiracy going on, and they're trying to figure out what it is about. And then you follow a couple of other characters that are on the villain side, basically, which makes it for a really interesting storytelling because you get all of these different POVs from the different people. And that kind of helps you puzzle the story together. Very interesting magic system in this one, based off of stones that enhance your natural given magical abilities. Very interesting things going on with the belief system. That is always something that I really enjoy reading about. I don't want to spoil anything because you can get into spoileratory relatively quickly with that. But just know there's some really cool stuff going on. The characters are very interesting and the writing is good too. So it's definitely an addictive read. I kind of read through that really, really fast. Technically, I finished this on September 1st. I still throw it in here because, I finished it. So there's no point in waiting till the end of September to tell you about it. And I will definitely continue reading this. This is actually a buddy read if you're interested in joining us over on Andrew's Wizardly Reads channel. Nico, Marilyn, and I have been reading book 1. So yeah, if you're interested in reading something that no one else talks about and that completely hits you out of left field, join us over there. It's really worth it. And the last book that I just briefly want to mention in the fantasy section is Stephen Erickson, Midnight Tides. I'm only 6%, 7% into the book, but I'm so glad I switched to English. Such a better reading experience. I'm enjoying it so much more. Now that I currently have no other book to read, this is definitely my priority in September. This writing style is so much better. I finally at a point where I understand what people say about the writing or the reading experience, that the prose is amazing, because the German translation, do not read Malazan in German. It's not good. Moving into sci-fi. Starting with Lost Souls by Ryan Skeffington. This was also a buddy read over at Andrews Wizardly Reads channel. The author put a channel up, I think like about 2 months ago maybe, and asked if people want to join a read of his debut novel. He was nice enough to all gift us an ebook, and I'm really glad that I signed up for that and said, hey, I'm joining this, because A, it sounded really interesting, and B, it turned out to be really interesting. It's a very interesting premise of in the future, humans now live in a ring world, and humans advanced to a new society that exists in this ring world. And you have your typical class system. You have poor people, middle class, and the rich people. And the poor people obviously are always worse off than everybody else. And the story is something very reminiscent, or at least that's how it starts out, of the typical, hey, poor people trying to move up and destroy the class system, that kind of stuff. It has some very interesting twists towards the end. The characters are also very interesting. There's a lot of conversation around how this ring world functions and how people live there, how they get air, how gravity works. I found that all very fascinating. We had a really good discussion in the Discord channel, and the author talked about what he was trying to do when it comes to the storytelling in his debut novel, and he acknowledged that it was an experiment and that he will change it for book 2 and 3. And that's the part that I struggled with a little bit, because there are big time jumps that were not necessarily obvious. But when it just comes to the premise and the story itself, it was super interesting. And that is also one where I want to read book 2, which I think he is preparing right now for release. Don't quote me on that. The other book that I read also on audio was The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. This was part of the Ray Bradbury book club over at the Bookish Drummers Discord. This is a set of short stories, but there's an overarching premise that is Mars, right? So all of the stories essentially play on Mars, or most of the stories play on Mars. And again, set in the future. It starts 2030. That's not too far away anymore. So it starts in 2030 and then goes all the way to 2100 something rather. You're following the development of how Mars was colonialized and how people lived there, to then other things. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. It started out really funny. I liked the humor a lot in the first stories. It was very quirky. I loved the Martians that we meet at the beginning, and then it started to go downhill, unfortunately for me. One of the things with Ray Bradbury that I'm realizing now that I'm reading so much of his stuff back to back is it's all very samey. Like the way he tells stories, yes, the characters are different and what the story's about is all very different, but the way he tells the story and the way he puts his sentences together, it's all very similar. And the way the characters talk and the way the characters are and behave is all very similar. And it gets a bit meh at one point. And it probably doesn't help that I'm listening to the audiobooks with all the same narrator. That also adds to the samey feeling that I'm having. So I will do the next one in September. I might not continue afterwards. It depends on how the September book club pick goes. But, he's good. I'm not questioning that at all. It feels all very similar, and I'm just kind of like, okay, I got it now. That sounds terrible. But I hope you understand what I mean. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. Last category, thriller horror picks. And just a quick mention of my one DNF, which is The Next Miss Parrish by Liv Constantine, which I actually wanted to read in September. I mentioned it in my September TBR. But my hold came through early, like one of those, skip the line, you just have it for a couple of days type of things. And I was like, perfect. I don't need more than 7 days to read it. I got 23% in and then just realized I have no idea what's going on anymore. I read book 1 years ago, and that's the problem, I assume. There was not really a good summary at the beginning to kind of refresh on what it was about. Some things I remembered as I listened to, but generally speaking, I forgot so much that I just decided to stop it and reread the first book before I start book 2. The other 2 books that I read were by Zoe Stage, and that was Baby Teeth and Dear Hannah, because Dear Hannah, the sequel to Baby Teeth, came out in August. And Stacy, Jake, and I decided to reread Baby Teeth and then read Dear Hannah immediately because Zoe Stage is a favorite author of ours. And Baby Teeth was fantastic. That was a 5-star reread again. I love the creepiness of this book. 2 steps backwards, Baby Teeth is about a creepy kid, but it's much more about kind of miscommunication and what it can lead to. I mean, obviously, there's more going on. To get the view of the mother and the child. And my favorite parts were following the child and trying to get her logic for what it is that she is doing. It's horrible, don't get me wrong. Like, there's definitely some misguided efforts on her side on, like, hey, I just want to be loved, you know, and she doesn't show it in a good way, but that's what I really liked. So it's really good psychological horror with a creepy kid and just situations that you don't want to find yourselves in, and it's fantastic. And then Dear Hannah is the sequel. We meet the creepy kid again, but now she's a grown-up. She's married, she has a stepdaughter, and something happens in her life that kind of throws off her well-structured together life that she had till this point, and cracks are starting to show. It doesn't have the creepiness, psychological horror aspects that Baby Teeth has. It's much calmer than Baby Teeth, and you do not have to have read Baby Teeth in order to enjoy Dear Hannah. There's actually a lot of viewing back on what happened back then, which made it feel a bit repetitive after having just read Baby Teeth. But, you know, that's my problem, not the book's problem. The other thing was I completely went in with wrong expectations, so I expected something similarly creepy that Baby Teeth was, and the purpose of Dear Hannah was entirely different. And once I, you know, readjusted my expectation, I actually really enjoyed this one. It was an interesting view into, okay, what happens to a kid that struggled so much, that what we've seen in Baby Teeth, what happens to a child like that once they're grown up? Yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. What was your favorite book that you read in August? Tell me about it. What was it about? If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can listen to more ramblings in the future. And then I hope to see you with one of my next videos. Till then, have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.